Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Catriona Morten, I'm a sensory motor psychotherapist, and today I'm joined by my lovely furry assistant, Lily. She's going to be helping us today. What I'd like to look at is why the body's so important and how it stores its memory and its past experiences and how they play themselves out on a subconscious level. So every experience that we have, we feel it, we live it. It's through our body that we have all these experiences. We feel these things, we have pain, we have body sensation, we have all these emotions that go through us, and it's where all our coping mechanisms play themselves out and get stored. We're really adaptive as humans. We're brilliantly adaptive. Whatever our situation and our experience and our environment was when we were growing up, we learn to adapt into that. If everything is great and fine, then we just have our funny little quirks and things that we pick up from our parents and little mannerisms that we have. But if there's been situations that have actually been quite tricky, especially if they've been consistently tricky, our body's really clever. So if, for instance, we have volatile parents when we're growing up, if they can be a little bit critical or scathing, then we don't really want to draw massive attention to ourselves. So we're much more likely to have mannerisms and coping mechanisms that would look a lot like shrinking, being small, not taking up very much space, going unnoticed and under the radar. When I'm with a client, when we start talking about trickier things, they're focused on the story, on the narrative and trying to explain how things were. I'm listening to that, but I'm also noticing what the body's doing. Often when I draw their attention to it and say, can I just make you aware, do you want to just notice, see what you can tell that your body's doing right now? Sometimes if being noticed has been a problem, then one of the first things that people do is they'll try and correct it. Oh, I'm always doing that. Oh yeah, I'll stop doing that. When I can encourage people to not correct it, but let's really take notice of it. What can that tell us? When they can do that and they begin to notice, okay, yeah, my arms are really tightly into my sides, or they're squashed across my body, or my shoulders are coming forward and everything's collapsing a little bit. Is your breathing gone really quiet and silent as well? Yeah, it's really small and really still. If that's been a really useful way of just going under the radar, not being a target, meaning that you're not going to get picked on, then any sign of trouble, that's what our body's going to do. Or if our feet and our legs have to get ready to flee and to run and get out of a situation, then when things start getting tricky, people's feet will just start moving. You notice your legs are having difficulty staying still. When you can say, I wonder if being small or getting ready to run would have been a really useful coping mechanism. Is there ever a time that that would have made sense? While we can view this as something irritating, I wish we could change this, we can't while it's still unconscious. And so when I'm working with somebody, what I'm encouraging them to do is, instead of just changing it off, oh, my shoulders are always coming up like that, well, maybe there's a good reason for that happening. Being aware of it instead of just keeping trying to correct it, because we can correct it and then it just goes back into its old coping mechanism and its old ways of being. When we can really sense into those, sometimes people don't have an awful lot of memory. A lot of the people that I work with have huge gaps in the memory. So they're not sure what it was like. They're very vague recollection. I'm not sure if that, what it was like, or, have an awful lot of story to back things up. When we can sense into the body and say, well, what's it like for you being in this body that you can feel it's trying to make itself smaller, minimize itself in size and in noise and in movement. Often when people can really sense inwards and feel all these things and just be really consciously aware of them, then one, it gives us a clue as to what might be needed as a resource for that. Because what we want to do is just have a bit of expansion. But if something in there is saying, be small, be quiet, be hidden and not noticed, then it's very difficult to just have expansion. People might feel a little bit self-conscious or just uncomfortable doing that. So we work with what the body's doing so it can spontaneously open up, be bigger, breathe deeper, have a bit more movement and be seen. The second thing that it can tell us is it can give us that experience, that felt sense experience, and it can help us connect to memory and to emotion of, you know, when your body shrinks like that, how do you feel? I feel really young. And sometimes when people talk, they'll be looking upwards. It's like, okay, I can see that you're in a much younger part of yourself. So what do you need to be able to come out into a bit more of a strong, centered adult place in here so that you can have this? And we work with what the body's doing. We don't work against it because it's got a good reason for doing that. When we can be conscious of what we're doing, you know, notice it. Try not to judge it as something that's wrong. It's like, oh, I wish I didn't keep doing that. Well, there's a good reason why I'm doing that. If I can join in with that, if I can be more conscious of it and understand why that's happening and why that was really important back then, just because it's not now, bodies don't get that message that things have moved on. So if we really want to make big changes in our life, you know, I'd like to be able to speak up for myself and not go really quiet in conflict, or, you know, I'd like to be able to think clearer and give an opinion on things instead of always shrinking back. Well, then we need to work with the physical shrinking back. We can't just go, okay, next time I'm going to say that, I'm going to do that. When we start to be able to make the unconscious conscious, then what it enables us to do is have an observer on board. Instead of being in it and just shrinking and not understanding why and not being able to speak up for herself, when we can begin to observe what it is I'm doing, what am I doing right now? We've got an observer part that's almost external to us, that's actually being able to notice, not judging, and taking on this information. When our observer comes on board, then we've got a real opportunity to observe what we're doing and put in a resource or see what we can do to expand our breathing, because we want to be able to expand and not shrink down. That observer is really important, because once we develop that skill, then it doesn't switch itself off. It's like something else switches on, and we just automatically switch into observing. It can really help observing others. If someone's behaviour is impacting on us, instead of just being impacted on it, when we can observe what's actually happening, then we've got a massive advantage. So if we can notice the impact that this is having, and we can feel the way that our body is responding, and observe that, one, we can do something about it, but also we can then use our observer to say, I wonder if that's an intentional thing that's happening. Or I wonder if that person's aware of that. If not, they might welcome a bit of feedback. You know, when you say something in that tone of voice, or when you do X, Y, or Z, I find it really intimidating and feel like I want to shrink away from you. When we can begin to observe others, then it can give us a real heads up about their intention, if they're pushing our boundaries, and what it is that we feel like is happening in this interaction. Instead of just being affected and feeling it's a kind of personal thing, of just being curious about, I wonder what could be going on here. I wonder why I have that reaction. Maybe it's something to do with my past experiences. Maybe this thing reminds me of past events, or maybe this person really is in coaching on my boundaries. Maybe this person has an intention of maybe putting me down, wanting me to feel less. But it really, really gives us a heads up as to what's happening in this dynamic, and also a clue as to what we might be able to do for ourselves to either lessen the impact or alter this interaction and alter this dynamic somehow. The things that go on in the body are so important. They give us way, way, way more information and way more ways of actually changing these interactions. And if we think about a lot of the phrases that we use, they're all to do with things that happen in the body, and they're all usually incredibly true and really relevant. We'll talk about something and say, oh, and it made my blood run cold. Well, actually, sometimes if we have that kind of sensation of, oh, that's really shocking and chilling, it actually physiologically does happen. If we go into shock, all our blood comes away from our extremities and we go really cold, or our circulation shuts down and our body temperature drops. It warms my heart, sends shivers down my spine. These things are all real body experiences to things. We say them in a kind of throwaway way, but actually that's literally what our bodies feel. When we can learn to catch those things in real time, when we have a body experience of something, this is way, way, way better at picking up intent from someone than this. If we only listen to the words and what's being spoken about, and we've got our head engaged fully and we're not aware of this, then those subtle but sometimes not very subtle things start to be able to be felt. So we can make that conscious instead of unconscious. We can begin to observe those things and we pick up the cues that our body's telling us. It's going to tell us way, way, way more about the intention and whatever this dynamic is than what our head thinks about. It's afterwards, oh, why didn't I say that? Or why didn't I do that? When you can pick up on this, when it gives you time, it gives you way more information, and when you can resource this, know what you need to do to keep it regulated, and then you've got your clever thinking brain on. Then you're going to be able to think and speak at the same time. So we want to expand, be regulated, not be shut down and small and insignificant with our brains offline and not be able to think. If we can do all those things, then everything, these kind of interactions are going to be way, way, way easier. They're going to make more sense, and we're going to have a sense of control over ourselves, as well as a huge heads up and understanding about actually what's going on. I hope all that makes sense, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this video with myself and my lovely furry assistant Lily. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to our channel below, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye!